Hello, everyone. This is Brent Leatherwood from the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission of the Southern Baptist Convention. And you may have noticed this week we are focusing on the Olympics and the oppression that is occurring in China. And today, my colleague Jason Thacker, who leads our research institute and a number of our research efforts here at the ERLC, is joining me to talk about this a little bit more. Jason, with the Olympics beginning, there's been a number of news stories out there about how athletes who are participating in the games are being mandated to use these sort of health apps. But it seems that most people are seeing right through that as a way for China to actually be spying on people. Is that true? And if so, what concerns you about this?
Yeah, it's a very concerning development. The Chinese Communist Party is requiring all athletes to download a health app onto their phone as part of their zero COVID policy, which is being challenged to extreme measures currently, especially with the influx of athletes coming into Olympic Village. But they're required to download this onto their phones. And many countries around the world have told their athletes to either bring burner phones or to not use their own personal devices, not to connect to any type of internet, especially the Wi-Fi that's provided. Because the Chinese Communist Party has a long track record of using these technological devices to spy on not only their own people, but also visitors to their country, to scrape various bits of data, to collect that data, and to use it for nefarious purposes. And that's one of the concerning things about this specific app that's being required for all of them to have on their devices, is that it's been shown through backdoors and things that they have access to massive amounts of data, much more than would ever need to be collected. And the way that the Chinese Communist Party has historically used data, this is a really concerning development, especially for the safety of athletes and their families around the world.
Earlier this winter, you wrote a story for us looking at China's long history of using technology to kind of spread its tyrannical abuses. Where else are we seeing this play out? I mean, obviously, we're talking about the Olympics, but where else are they using these sorts of tyrannical endeavors?
Yeah, this is not new to anyone who has kind of followed along with China's development, becoming a global superpower in the recent decades. Most of the power that the Chinese Communist Party has been able to obtain has been on the back of technology, whether it was the early days of ChinaNet and the Great Firewall, of being able to basically wall off China from the rest of the world, information coming in and information coming out. So much so that Chinese citizens don't have free access to the internet like we do in the West. We can Google Tiananmen Square. They can't go to a search engine and find anything about Tiananmen Square. They're not able to find information about the ongoing genocide in Xinjiang. They're not able to express themselves freely, especially as we've seen in recent years through the struggles in Hong Kong and the democratic process and free speech and free expression. You see this with Tibet. You see this with Taiwan. The Chinese Communist Party is using technology, especially the internet-based technologies, to spy on their people, to round people up through facial recognition technology based on their ethnicity, specifically Uyghurs. And you see this extend through every aspect of Chinese life. One of the power plays or the abilities to control China is done through technological means. And that's why it's extremely concerning as we approach the Olympics, is because we have a massive influx of people coming in, but also China and Beijing specifically is in the world spotlight. It's being highlighted as this inclusive place where all of these ethnicities come together, and this looks like a freedom-loving people. But the messages, the propaganda that is being put out by the Chinese Communist Party is completely false. That's not what's happening in China right now. And that's one of the reasons our organization has specifically been highlighting these human rights violations, these massive breaches of security and privacy, to say this is not okay. We need to counter China, not just economically, not just in terms of military superpower, et cetera, but also morally, because these are grave human rights violations that need to be highlighted.
Yeah, you explored some of this recently on your podcast, The Digital Public Square, with Axios reporter Bethany Ibrahimian, and it was a great conversation, certainly helpful, and we want to commend that to our audience. The last question I have for you is related to that. Last summer, the Southern Baptist Convention became the first faith group in the United States to condemn what is happening in China as a genocide, what is being perpetrated against the Uyghur people there. Some people may look at that and say, that is on the other side of the globe. Why should I care about that? So let me ask you that. Why should Christians care about what is happening to an ethnic minority or religious minority in China?
Yeah, there's multiple answers to that question. I think one of the most pressing, kind of first and foremost type of answers is that these people, these ethnic groups around the world, are created in the very image of God. This is the answer to Jesus's to the question that Jesus was asked: is who is my neighbor? Well, it's our fellow human beings that are created in God's image, who have infinite value, worth, and dignity. And while we might disagree on the exact policies or the exact measures that need to be taken, and there's a lot of good discussion that can happen on that, one of the things that is not really a discussion is that these people are created in God's image. They're having massive violations, not just into their privacy, not just into their data, but forced sterilizations, re-education camps, massive abuses, and just despicable things happening to these people who are created in the very image of God. And that's the reason Christians care about these issues. That's the reason Christians stand up, just as the Southern Baptist Convention did last summer, to say this is a genocide. This is terrible. This is something that we have to stand against. And that's the ironic part of what's happening, especially with the Olympics right now, is that all eyes are on Beijing and the truth is being covered up. The truth of what's happening in the western region of Xinjiang, what's happening in Tibet, what's happening in Taiwan, what's happening in Hong Kong even, is that there is a show being put on. The carpet is being rolled out as if China is just every other nation around the world. And we know that every nation around the world has issues and sin because it's ubiquitous. But specifically what's happening in China should sicken us. It's disturbing what's happening. And we need to rightfully bring light to that, whether it's through diplomatic boycotts that the United States and other countries have done, through just highlighting these human rights atrocities, and highlighting in some sense the whitewashing of China and Beijing right now. What's happening, even with the International Olympics Committee, is that these things are happening right before our eyes. And the world must speak up. The world must say, this is not okay.
Yeah, oh, that's great. This is, like I said, it's been a focus for us all week. There are a number of resources at ERLC.com for folks who are interested in that as the Olympics begin. So Jason, thank you for this time. And we thank all of you for continuing to be with us here at the ERLC.